And welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, coming to you solo this week because of the difficulties of the holiday schedule. Justin Lowry unable to join. But before we get started, did want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. That's upcoming here in a matter of days. So this is the last time we'll be on the podcast before Christmas. We'll try to have a post-Christmas year-end show in which we give out the top awards throughout the WWE and the world of professional wrestling. That'll be next week, but this is going to be a busy week to discuss because pretty significant week in the world of WWE. Not only the TLC pay-per-view that took place on Sunday, but the subsequent shows Monday and Tuesday with Raw and Smackdown Live that supposedly was going to be a breath of fresh air, according to Vince McMahon and those around him, as certainly they are very cognizant, very aware of the dwindling ratings, especially on Raw, aware of all the public complaint, the feedback that has not been positive by any stretch of the imagination. So Vince McMahon and crew decided to make some changes on Raw as well as SmackDown. We'll get into those and what that could mean short-term and long-term. But first, I did want to touch on the TLC pay-per-view. Now, I always like to get Justin Lowry's insight. He's not able to join us, but I did ask him, what would you grade TLC? He said B, and I would say probably along the same lines, maybe a B+. I thought it was a good show. I thought that there was a lot that was accomplished. That's not to say it was a perfect show, and really, it's been far from perfect almost all year in WWE, but I think this is a step in the right direction. The biggest takeaway, among several, was the main event was very deservedly the triple threat TLC match for the SmackDown Women's title, Becky Lynch, the champion, Charlotte, and Asuka. At times, I feel like when they make a women's match a main event, it's felt forced just to say, oh, we're making this the main event, it's historic. This, I think, was the biggest match at TLC. It had the most anticipation, the most excitement, and you knew it was going to deliver in the ring. So it made a lot of sense for this to be the main event, and I thought it did deliver, and it gave a very interesting outcome. As you could see, Asuka hoisting the title. She is now your SmackDown Women's Champion. Hard to believe this is the first gold that she has won on the main roster. Of course, she was so dominant in NXT, relinquished the title without ever being defeated due to injury, came up to the main roster. She appeared poised to be a Raw champion. Didn't happen. She lost her undefeated streak at WrestleMania against Charlotte when she challenged for the SmackDown Women's Championship. So, really the first time that we have seen Asuka claim gold on the main roster, and it sort of came out of nowhere. She had been underutilized and really an afterthought for the past several months, and they decide to give her this opportunity in this triple threat match. I will give credit to my colleague Justin Lowry for predicting Asuka would win. I didn't think the company had the faith in her yet. She came across looking terrific in the match. That being said, the biggest takeaway was why Becky and Charlotte did not win, that being Ronda Rousey costing them. So now it seems as though there's a very legitimate chance we might be getting a triple threat at WrestleMania, and it could be the main event at WrestleMania, Becky Lynch, Charlotte, and Ronda Rousey. I'm not sure if it's better to go triple threat, if it's better just to do maybe a one-on-one between Becky and Ronda. Obviously, we've already seen Charlotte and Ronda at Survivor Series. But nonetheless, the fact that this main evented, it felt like a true main event, and these women just went out of their minds with the high spots. It was death-defying in many ways. I think it was the highlight of the night. And again, I think that's saying something because there's a pretty good show, and there's some other really good matches. But Asuka's now champion, and you get the feeling it could be, believe it or not, bigger and better things for both Charlotte and for Becky Lynch without the title. So we'll see how they handle Asuka. We'll see how they handle the storylines with those two and Ronda Rousey. But I like this decision as long as they stay true to keeping Asuka as a very formidable champion and not someone that's going to lose the title and then disappear again. Delivered, certainly. That, to me, was the highlight of the show. But not far behind was the terrific match for the WWE Championship, Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles. Two of the best in the world in ring. You figured it would be a clinic. It was exactly that. Now, the ending, maybe some people said, I don't want to see a roll-up ending. I want to see a more decisive finish. I think in this storyline and then these two competing, it makes sense. They're so evenly matched. They're such great competitors. I don't think you needed one to, really get a dominant, decisive victory. I think the way that it worked out, Daniel Bryan was just this much better as an in-ring tactician against AJ. Caught him off guard a little bit. Terrific match, though. I thought it was, one of the better ones we've seen this year. And, the storyline was not real heated. It wasn't a super personal rivalry between these two. But I think that's good. You don't want every rivalry being, ultra personal like we've seen so many times with AJ Styles this year. This one didn't have that same feel. It was more about the championship, more about two in-ring guys determining who was the better man. Daniel Bryan was slightly better, but another really, really good match. I thought that those two really set the tone, along with the Triple Threat SmackDown Tag Team Championship, New Day, and the Usos challenging the Bar. Really just great in-ring action. I think Ronda Rousey and Nia Jax had a terrific match as well. Very comparable to the first time that they went at it. This time, however, there was a true winner with Ronda Rousey retaining. So those were all positives from the show, and I think there was a lot. The biggest negative, the biggest disappointment, in my estimation, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. And this storyline really, it just didn't have that feel of being as big as it could have been and should have been going into the match, and I think the match sort of epitomized that. It was just long and at times boring, and I know the fans, somewhat disrespectfully were chanting, "This is boring." I know Seth Rollins addressed that the next night on Raw, how disappointed he was to hear that and how he needs to be better. This was such a personal rivalry, kind of what I spoke of, the opposite of Daniel Bryan and AJ, that the slow pace, the back and forth moves, the wrestling that we saw as opposed to fighting didn't make a lot of sense. And this was the type of match I think that needed a stipulation. People were saying, why wasn't this a TLC match as opposed to Braun Strowman and Baron Corbin, which turned out to be basically a joke squash match? Why didn't this have a stipulation? Why wasn't this something, even no DQ, whatever, where they could really go at it and show how personal this is, how much this means to both of them? It didn't have that feeling. The match was too long in my estimation. And I think another issue with it, and we've mentioned, Justin and I have mentioned this before, the audience gets burned out when they have shows this long, because keep in mind, you have an hour of pre-show from 6 to 7, and that involved two matches, including Elias and Lashley, which certainly should have been on the main card. Cruiserweight Championship as well, and those guys are deserving of a main spot. But nonetheless, something has to get bumped. So you start at 6 o'clock. Ambrose Rollins comes on at, just about 10 o'clock or so. You've already been watching wrestling for 4 hours. There's still this great main event to come with the women. It's kind of, a sort of a reset period where they have to, settle down and then get back up for the main event. Well, the match in between sometimes, kind of serves as a buffer for that and makes it tough for the audience to really get into. I think that Ambrose and Rollins also fell victim to that. I would have liked to have seen maybe, about 15 minutes as opposed to, I think it went like 23 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. Give it a stipulation, make it more intense, hard-hitting, and probably find better placement for it as well. I think that's a tough spot for any match. I mean, you very could have easily had the mixed match challenge finals fill that spot, and no one would have been too upset about that one not getting a great reaction. But they decided to set it up as they did, a little peculiar in that sense. Nonetheless, that was the big disappointment, and really it seems like Dean Ambrose's entire heel turn, with the exception of the night that it happened, has been kind of disappointing. Let's take a look at the predictions that Justin and I made. Everyone always loves predictions. This is what we guessed heading into the show, and you can see he and I were very similar. We only differed on two matches, that being the SmackDown Women's Championship match and the Elias versus Bobby Lashley match. We were on the same page with everything else, and let's see how it turned out. Pretty good, I would say. We both missed just 3 matches, so we go 9-3 each, which is pretty darn good percentage. I'll take 75% all day long. The ones that we missed, Justin actually got the SmackDown Women's Championship correct. I did not. Conversely, I got Elias winning. He did not. The ones that we both missed, Drew McIntyre losing, I think, was pretty surprising to Finn Balor. McIntyre had been undefeated for months and months. Now he's lost to Ziggler and Balor in the span of 2 weeks, or really less than a week. So it's just surprising that Drew McIntyre lost again, and I know it was as a result of the interference by Ziggler, but I think that one probably caught most people off guard, I would suspect. The Seth Rollins pick, we both missed that one as well. My thought process behind that one was, he's doing a really good job elevating that title, and I think that the open challenge, things like that are interesting. Seth Rollins certainly makes it much more interesting because he's one of the best in-ring guys, and Dean Ambrose would, although we'll get into Dean Ambrose and his own open challenge for the Intercontinental title on Raw. But 9-3, we'll take it. Justin and I, neither one of us could get any separation, so I think we'll gladly take the tie and say, at least for the final pay-per-view of 2018, we were pretty equal. Overall, a good show. If I were to grade it again, I'm thinking probably B+. I think it's certainly better than a lot that we've seen. And with the exception of Rollins and Ambrose, I wouldn't point to a lot that I could say was disappointing. I thought everything else was, solid. Some things like Corbin Strowman, you don't get really much out of that, but that's okay. Not every match has to be a 15-minute in-ring classic. Sometimes just furthering a storyline or paying off a storyline. In this case, is all you need. So I liked TLC. I thought it was pretty darn good and a good way to finish up 2018 in terms of the pay-per-views. However, that being said, more anticipation was being built for Monday night with the announcement that Vince McMahon would be on the show, and he wanted to shake things up. There's rumors, would there be a draft again? I didn't want to see that. What exactly would he do? Well, we start off Raw with not only Vince, but Stephanie, Triple H, and Shane McMahon, the quartet of the McMahon family. Of course, Linda's not really acknowledged anymore at this point. She's out of the company doing her political stuff. Shane McMahon's sort of interesting because, as far as I'm to understand, he really doesn't have much say at all in how this company is run. He's more so primarily just an on-screen character, but certainly has more influence than a typical on-screen guy, so I understand why he's out there. Of course, he had been in charge and still is in charge of SmackDown. Stephanie had been in charge of Raw, but Triple H and Vince coming out there. I love the idea of them saying, we need to make changes. We understand the complaints. We understand the ratings are a concern. We understand the product's not very good. I just think this fell flat because they turned it too much into a storyline as opposed to really, in real life, addressing the issues. So basically the takeaways from this were, we're going to listen more to the fans. We're going to do things different. It's going to be new. It's going to be fresh. Not a lot of specifics, however. But the thing that I hated the most was saying, we're going to take back control of Monday Night Raw as well as SmackDown to a lesser degree. Anyone that knows anything about professional wrestling knows that they've always had control. And they did this to get more heel heat for Baron Corbin. He's now out of the picture. Okay, that's fine. That's probably for the best. But to claim that Baron Corbin is the reason why the Raw brand has been difficult to watch for months or years in some people's eyes, that's just a cop-out. I mean, we know anyone that's voicing these complaints, usually it's your more hardcore fans, your internet-savvy fans, your fans that know what goes on after, the camera stops rolling behind the scenes. Those people realize that blaming Baron Corbin is just a joke, So I don't think that the actual superstars really feel like this is going to be a big change. And I think the savvy fans also are very skeptical. To hear that they're taking back Raw, if that means we're going to see Vince and Stephanie and to a lesser extent Triple H and Shane each and every week, I don't think that's what people want either. I know that's not what I want. I know that's not what Justin wants. We want it to be about the in-ring competitors showing their ability, probably getting more leeway with segments, promos, allowing them to go out and work these matches that they're capable of having. Maybe we'll see that, but the way that they explained it doesn't serve to really comfort the fans that had been complaining. I mean, I got nothing out of this announcement. I wish, maybe they can come out and say some real concrete things. Like, one, we're done with the authority figures constantly being involved in storylines. We're done with that. That would be a breath of fresh air. Kind of like how Paige is on SmackDown. She's there to make matches but doesn't get overly involved. It's not all about her. It's about the current superstars. Also say, maybe, final hour of Raw, 10 to 11. That's now going to be, PG-14 or TV-14 or whatever you want to call it, so that it's a little more edgy. You could still have your first 2 hours for the kids like SmackDown is. That final hour where they struggle to keep viewership up, do something like that where it gives people maybe a little bit of a Attitude Era feel. And I don't need over the top violence or sexuality or vulgarity, but I think you can mix that in a little bit more, give it a different feel for the final hour. And that's something that, fans my age or even, later teenage years would be interested in. Maybe that's enough to pull them back in and keep them around to watch the show. But at least you're making something concrete as far as a change. Now, the only thing that I remember them really saying was they're not necessarily going to honor the rematch clause. I don't think anyone was complaining that was a thing. They didn't address the fact that their champion is never there defending the title on Brock Lesnar. That would be a good thing, saying we're actually going to enforce the 30-day title defense rule. They just let that one slide, so that's an issue. Just saying we're going to listen to the fans, we're going to make changes, not specific enough. And to me, the track record in recent years shows that even if they make short-term changes, long-term, it's going to be whatever Vince McMahon really wants. And I think by the time you get to WrestleMania season, probably starting, maybe in late February or March, it's not going to be what the fans want. It's going to be what he wants. So I'm skeptical, even though we did see plenty of signs of improved utilization of some of the superstars on Raw and SmackDown. The main event of Raw was sort of unique. It was an hour-long, basically, women's gauntlet match. Ronda Rousey came out, cut a promo, said, I'm a fighting champion. I'll open to whoever wants to challenge. Stephanie comes out and says, I'm going to make a gauntlet match. I believe it was 8 women who competed. So it goes basically from 10 o'clock until 11 o'clock. And Natalya gets the victory. Now, I will say, none of these women, the 8 who competed, were made to look like a joke in this. Even like an Alicia Fox, a Dana Brooke, they got their moves in. They weren't defeated in 30 seconds. So it was a good showcase for the women, not just, the ones that we're familiar with seeing, not just the Sasha Banks, not just the Bayley, not just the Natalya who ended up winning, but the Alicia Fox, the Ember Moon, the Dana Brooke. They're all getting their opportunities in this. But to me, it had so many lulls to it. An hour of that, do fans want to see Mickie James wrestling for 20 minutes? I don't know that they do. You don't want women losing in 30 seconds, but I think they could have tightened this up or done something to make it a little more interesting. Have a surprise entrant in it. Have a surprise outcome. Or even after Natalya wins, her and Ronda hug like best friends. People wanted to see something different. Maybe a heel turn by Natalya. I don't think they're going to do the heel turn by Ronda, even though they sort of teased it at TLC. Ultimately, Ronda's still a face. So to me, the main event, yes, it was a different approach. Didn't seem like it really clicked for me. I like that they're giving the women a chance, but it wasn't anything special on a night where I think they needed something special for the main event. However, prior to that, we did see some good signs of superstars who've been overlooked for far too long getting opportunities, getting recognition. One was the Revival winning a tag team 4 corners match to now challenge Bobby Roode and Chad Gable for the tag team championship. So it's good the Revival maybe will get an opportunity. Seth Rollins mentioned them by name a week ago in his promo complaining about all the issues that Raw has. He said the Revival deserves a chance. Everyone's been saying that, so I think they're listening. That said, the Revival's sort of damaged goods right now. So the casual fans or the younger kids or whatever, why are they all of a sudden going to respect the Revival and view them as legitimate contenders? They haven't been. They've been a joke. So it's kind of hard to change that into a complete 180. I think you have to work your way into that. That being said, Revival getting a push is good, but it's got to come at the expense of someone, right? I mean, it doesn't seem like they're going to dedicate 3, 4, 5 segments on Raw to tag teams. So if it's the Revival getting the opportunity now, does that mean the AOP goes by the wayside? Is that really any better? Yeah, everyone likes the Revival, but I think the Authors of Pain, based on what they've done in NXT and what they've shown on Raw, they deserve to be in the mix. So it's kind of tough because I think they need to not just do short-term fixes of, oh, we'll throw this guy in this spot more prominently than before, and everyone will be happy. It's not like that. We saw another example of that with, as I mentioned, Dean Ambrose having an open challenge. Who answered? Tyler Breeze. I love the fact that Tyler Breeze is getting an opportunity, but it was just one Monday. Will they follow up with it? Will he build off of his narrow loss? I mean, he gave Ambrose a run for his money. Ambrose is, an okay guy in the ring. He's solid. He's really prided himself on being a workhorse. He's not a terrific talent. I go back to thinking, what if that was Seth Rollins and Tyler Breeze? That could have been something really special. Or Seth Rollins and Apollo Crews. Instead, Ambrose, if he continues to do this, we'll get decent matches. And I think Breeze and Ambrose was a decent match, but it wasn't anything spectacular. Will they go back to Tyler Breeze this week, next week, the following week, and use him in a decent role then? Or is it, a one-off type of thing? Oh, well, we gave Tyler Breeze a chance. See, can't complain about us not using him. Well, that's not really... Fans that have a logical mind for wrestling realize you want to see these guys established on a regular, permanent basis. And I think that's what people want with Tyler Breeze and some of the other people that we've alluded to. Nonetheless, better Raw, probably not a good Raw, definitely not a great Raw. You have to wonder what's going to be the changes that they really do make. Because, I think not addressing specifics kind of leaves it open. We're going to have to keep a keen eye out for the next few weeks and see if Raw does improve. Whether the ratings show it or not, you will pretty easily be able to tell if this is a much different product that they're presenting. And I think if the product gets better, the ratings certainly will get better. It might take a little time, but I think that should be the goal, not just placating fans for 1 week by saying, oh, we're using this guy you've been wanting to see. You have to do things better, really from top to bottom. SmackDown also got a bit of a shakeup, and I actually thought SmackDown was a show that didn't need as much tinkering, but probably had much more of a feel of a breath of fresh air on Tuesday night, and it really started with the main event. And when this was announced, much like when Mustafa Ali and Daniel Bryan was first announced, the internet went buzzing. It was Mustafa Ali and AJ Styles against Daniel Bryan and Andrade Cien Almas. And Almas has been on the back burner. He really hasn't been seen much at all for weeks or months. He's a great in-ring guy that people want to see elevated. Ali, people reacted terrifically to him getting his chance against Daniel Bryan initially. They make the tag team match, and kind of a stunning outcome as this main evented SmackDown. Mustafa Ali cleanly defeats Daniel Bryan 1-2-3. And now the rumors are that Ali might actually get a title match at the Royal Rumble. He was a 205 Live guy, and I believe actually never even won the championship on 205 Live. Now he's getting a shot at the WWE Championship potentially at one of the major pay-per-views. That would be something that proves that this company is making changes. However, I have some concerns if that is a match, because I don't think it will get a great reaction from the fans that are in attendance, because they just don't know about this guy. They don't know how good he is. They don't have any reason to relate to him or cheer for him. They've only seen him for a couple of weeks, and yeah, they see him do flips. Who is this man? What makes him likable? What makes him a person that we want to rally behind? I think when you kind of just rush people into this, oh, well, we're going to give you the match, Daniel Bryan against Mustafa Ali. That's what the internet wants, right? You have to make it meaningful. You have to make Mustafa Ali a personality that people connect with. And that's what NXT does. And I think if you watch 205 Live every week, it's fine. But for the people, and let's be honest, most of the people don't watch that every week. They don't know who this guy is. So you could hear, maybe not crickets, but you're going to potentially get a very mundane reaction to a match like that if it happens at Royal Rumble. And these guys are good enough. They can win over the fans by the end with some great action. But I could totally see it being a solid match but the fans not really reacting, and Vince and company saying, see, that's why we don't give guys like Mustafa Ali a title match. Fans don't care. That's just, that's not the right way to approach this. So I'm all for Ali and Bryan at the Royal Rumble, but I think they have to understand the expectations, and they have to really put a focus on giving people a reason to care about Mustafa Ali. And really, he should just be, the example of what other superstars could ascend to. They could do this with Cedric Alexander. They could do it with Apollo Crews. They could do it with Buddy Murphy. They could do it with any number of competitors. Jack Gallagher. There's a ton of guys, including some in NXT UK. They could do this with Pete Dunne, So, and the same goes for, the women who are in NXT or NXT UK. These are scenarios where Ali could sort of be a template for, this is how we need to spice up the show. We're going to give these matches people have been clamoring for, but we have to make sure that there's meaning behind it. These people, the audience knows who they are, or certainly they're introduced and learn who these people are in short order. Because when you just throw a guy out there and just say, well, he's a good wrestler, you're not going to get that connection that you'll get with fans who see these people each and every week and get to hear their promos and get to see what makes them tick. So I think that this is a step in the right direction, and SmackDown had a lot of that. I mean, we saw Anderson and Gallows for the first time since August, according to what they said. We saw Sanity for the first time in a long time. We saw, again, Andrade Cien Almas for the first time in a long time. There's still other guys. There's a Ty Dillinger. There's so many great in-ring competitors or guys who really connect with the fans, who are very popular and charismatic, who aren't being used. That's going to happen now and then, but you need to do a better job of utilizing this talent. That's what I think this week was about in WWE, and they kind of did the same to kick off SmackDown, because Asuka came out, defended her title against Naomi, and Naomi has been overlooked. She's, in terms of actual physical talent, she might be as good as anyone on the main roster. She certainly, has had her moments in this company, but more times than not, she's been on the sidelines or in really insignificant feuds, meaningless matches. She came out, challenged Asuka. It was a good one. Asuka won, but that's fine because, Naomi got to show her stuff. And you can't push everyone at once. You can't make everyone a star. You can't give everyone a winning streak. But you can use everyone to have some purpose. So even though Naomi's below Asuka, Naomi's not going to be probably winning the championship anytime soon, make her credible so that if you do give her a push down the road, it's not, after months and months of being irrelevant. These are the type of things that I want to see the company continue to do. And I do think, despite the awful promo by the McMahon family on Raw, where they really just blamed, Corbin, and they did it all storyline related, they didn't really address the problems or solutions to those problems that are, the reality to it. I think you did see plenty of signs of underutilized talent being used better on Raw, being used better on SmackDown. There's going to be superstars called up. EC3, Nikki Cross, who we thought already was up. Heavy Machinery, Lacey Evans, and of course Lars Sullivan, who we've been teased about for over a month now. So make some changes, but make some concrete changes as well. Say we're gonna make sure our champions defend in 30 days. We're going to allow trades throughout the entire year between Raw and SmackDown, not just a superstar shakeup whenever. Trades that make sense. Okay, Usos and Naomi to Raw for, who knows, let's say Apollo Crews, Sasha, and Bayley. Well, now you give a fresh start to Sasha and Bayley on SmackDown. You give Naomi a chance on Raw. You give Raw a tag team it needs, and you give Apollo Crews an opportunity maybe to capture lightning in a bottle on SmackDown. That's just off the top of my head, but do something like that throughout the year when people are stale, when they need a change of scenery. That's an easy way to make this company a little more exciting. I think having more title matches on TV is another way to do that. Again, there's a lot that this company can do, and I am really hopeful 2019 will be better. That being said, the pessimist in me, watching this company, knowing how Vince McMahon is, you're always going to have to wonder, will he just go back to his old way after a couple weeks or a couple months if this dies down and ratings maybe get a little better? He said, wow, I can do what I want now. because the fans aren't, breathing down our necks about how bad this show is. That's going to do it for this episode of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. You could follow us on Twitter, 5-Star Pod Wrestle, and of course, check out our YouTube channel, subscribe, like the videos, and you can go back and watch all of them dating back to March. Did want to say that our plan is one final show here in 2018. It will be a year-end show, a wrap-up show, if you will. We're going to have some awards. I'll probably put voting up on Twitter, see what the fans say, and then Justin Lowry and I will make our picks for Superstar of the Year, Female Superstar of the Year, Match of the Year, things of that nature. That will be next week, the final episode of 2018. For now, Sean Meyers signing off, wishing you a Merry Christmas. We'll catch you again on the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.